I'm called Ava, and I'm 22. You might wonder how someone my age ends up living with their uncle, especially considering what I'm about to share. Honestly, I never thought this would happen either. I'm a graphic design student, and most of my time is spent drawing, designing, and doing freelance work. Life has been tough since my parents' divorce when I was younger. I moved around a lot, seeking stability, and eventually ended up staying with my uncle Nathan. It all began when my mum had to go away for work, and I needed a place to stay while finishing college. Nathan, my uncle, was the only family member who could help. He's been married to his wife Victoria for a few years now. They live in a beautiful house in the countryside, far from the city. I thought it would just be another temporary move to a quiet place, but things didn't turn out as expected. A few months later, I had adjusted to the house, the routine, and the peacefulness, or so I thought. But today, something happened. Something I need to share. He's not like most uncles to me. He's always been more of a mentor than a family member. Growing up, he taught me how to ride a bike, fix things around the house, and even bought me my first car when I turned 18. So when my mom needed someone to take me in, Nathan was the obvious choice. He's thoughtful, patient, and very kind. But it wasn't just him I was moving in with. His wife Victoria had been in the picture for a while. They married 2 years ago, and at first I wasn't too sure about her. She's older than Nathan, and something about her made me feel like an outsider in their home. Initially, I stayed in a guest room at the far end of the house, trying not to intrude. Over time, things became less awkward, and Victoria started giving me advice on cooking, cleaning, and household matters. We weren't best friends, but it wasn't as tense as it was before. I thought things were getting better, but recently I've noticed something I can't explain. The more time I spent with Nathan, the more I felt drawn to him, his smiles, the occasional touch of his hand, and the way he would look at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. It felt different. I couldn't ignore it. A tension between us began to build, an energy that was impossible to escape. I know what you're thinking. Ava, what are you talking about? He's your uncle. It sounds crazy, I know, but this connection is undeniable. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was in my head, but every time we were alone, the atmosphere felt charged, as if something was pulling us together. Here's where things get interesting. One evening after dinner, I was working on a project in my room when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Nathan had been napping for hours and Victoria was out with friends. We were alone. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I heard the door to his bedroom creak open. I froze for a second, unsure whether to leave him to rest or go inside. But something pulled me toward him. Quietly, I opened the door, trying not to disturb him. He was lying on his back, one arm behind his head, looking peaceful as he slept. The light from the window cast soft shadows over his face, making him look almost untouchable. I stood there for a moment, my heart racing. I could feel my face flush, my pulse quicken. I'd never felt this way before. Maybe I just wanted to look at him, or maybe it was something more. I didn't know. My thoughts were interrupted when I accidentally knocked over a vase near his bed. The sound made Nathan stir. His eyes opened and, for a brief moment, we locked gazes. There was confusion in his eyes, but something else too, something I couldn't quite name. He blinked a few times, trying to focus on me, then let out a groggy laugh. "Ava, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. My heart was racing as I struggled to find the right words. I didn't want to look like I was snooping, but I didn't know how to explain myself. My mouth went dry. I didn't mean to wake you," I stammered, feeling embarrassed. Nathan sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. He smiled at me with the same kind, patient smile he always gave, but today there was something different in his eyes, something that made my heart race. He studied me for a moment before speaking again. "It's okay," he said gently. "You know you can always talk to me, Ava. I'm here for you." I nodded, but my mind was spinning. I didn't know how to deal with this strange feeling. The room felt heavy and I could feel my breath coming faster. "I just wanted to talk," I whispered. Nathan's smile faded just a little, and I thought I saw a brief hesitation in his eyes before it vanished. He patted the bed next to him. "Come here, then." "You can always talk to me," he said warmly. I stood there for a moment, unsure, but something inside me pushed me forward. Without thinking, I sat next to him. The tension between us was thick, heavier than ever. I could feel the heat of his body next to mine, his cologne filling the air. We were so close that I could hear his breathing and feel the rise and fall of his chest with each breath. My heart raced again, and slowly, almost in slow motion, I looked up at him. Our faces were so close that I could feel his warmth. His gaze was soft, unsure. But there was something else, a spark that made my skin tingle. "Ava, are you okay?" Nathan asked gently. Before I could answer, I leaned in closer to him. My pulse was racing and my breath caught in my chest. I couldn't explain it, but everything felt so intense, as though the air itself was charged. Nathan didn't pull away. His eyes held mine with quiet intensity. He didn't speak, but his breath quickened, mirroring mine. The room felt warmer. The silence between us deepened with unspoken words. My mind was in a whirlwind. Everything had led to this moment. I couldn't stop myself. Slowly I leaned in, my lips trembling as they brushed against his. At first it was uncertain, tentative, but then, as his lips met mine, soft and gentle, I couldn't stop myself. My mind screamed for me to stop, but my body refused. I needed this. I wanted this. Nathan's hand cupped my cheek, pulling me closer. His other hand rested beside us, grazing my skin. I could feel the heat of his touch. The kiss deepened, and soon it was hard to tell where his lips ended and mine began. The rest of the world disappeared. It was just the two of us, caught in this undeniable connection. My mind raced with confusion, guilt, but also with a strange sense of rightness. What were we doing? Why did it feel so necessary? There were no words to explain it, no logic behind it. He pulled away for just a moment, his forehead resting against mine. Our breathing was heavy, each breath shaky and slow. I could feel his pulse against my skin, matching the rapid beat of my own heart. "Ava." His voice was soft, strained with something deeper. "We shouldn't, but—" I wasn't sure I agreed. Something inside me refused to acknowledge any reason to stop. Slowly, I reached for his hand, intertwining my fingers with his. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled around mine, holding on to me just as tightly as I was holding on to him. Our eyes met, and for a long moment we didn't speak. The weight of everything hung between us. Should we? Could we? My hand instinctively moved to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. I kissed him again. This time there was no hesitation, no fear, just the overwhelming need to stay close to him, to feel his presence. Nathan's hand slid down my back, drawing me closer. The contact of our bodies made everything feel incredibly intense. I didn't know where this was heading, but I didn't care. I wanted to stay in this moment where only the two of us existed. My heart pounded in my chest as his lips moved to my neck, pressing soft kisses against my skin. I could feel his breath against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before. Intimate, consuming, and deeply wrong yet thrilling in a way I couldn't explain. "You're sure about this?" he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with desire. "I don't want to hurt you." I closed my eyes, trying to find my voice. Everything inside me screamed to stop, to pull away, but I couldn't. The longing was too strong, the need too powerful. I didn't want to think anymore, didn't want to question anything. I just wanted to be with him. "I'm sure," I whispered, my hands moving over his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips. "I want this, Nathan. I want you." His lips found mine again, and this time the kiss was deeper, more urgent. There was no turning back now. The world outside of this room didn't matter. There was only the way he made me feel, desired, needed, and alive in a way I had never experienced before. The room seemed to close in around us, the light dimming as the intensity of our connection grew. Every touch, every kiss felt like a promise of something more, something neither of us fully understood but were both ready to explore. I could feel his heartbeat steady against mine, singing with the rhythm of my own. Even though part of me still fought against the reality of what was happening, a much larger part of me surrendered completely. It wasn't just kissing anymore, it was more than that. It was a connection I couldn't explain, a bond that went beyond words. "I've wanted this for so long," Nathan whispered, his breath warm against my lips. I could barely comprehend his words as my hands roamed over him, feeling the muscles beneath his skin, the heat of him, the way he responded to me. But there was no turning back now. There was only the pull between us, drawing us closer in a way neither of us had expected. Time seemed to stand still as we lost ourselves in each other, in the quiet rhythm of our kisses, the warmth of our touches. For the first time, everything felt right. In the stillness of the room, we were no longer just uncle and niece. We were two people bound by something deep, something more intense than anything I had ever known. The air between Nathan and me hung thick with tension. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. The silence was suddenly shattered by the sound of the front door opening downstairs. We froze, my heart raced, and I quickly pulled away from Nathan. Panic flooded my chest. What had we just done? What was happening between us? The guilt washed over me, but it was mingled with something else. Desire I couldn't ignore. I felt trapped between the moment we had just shared and the reality that we were entangled in something we couldn't easily undo. Nathan didn't move right away. His eyes were locked on mine, but his expression was unreadable. I could feel the heat between us, the lingering closeness that hadn't yet dissipated. "Ava," he whispered, his voice strained. Before he could say anything more, the sound of footsteps echoed up the stairs. Nathan heard a voice I immediately recognized. My heart sank. It was Victoria. I quickly jumped off the bed, my breath quick and shallow. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced in every direction, but I couldn't think of a way out of this. Was I really going to face her after what had just happened? The door to Nathan's room creaked open, and there she was. Victoria standing in the doorway, surprise written all over her face. Her eyes flickered between Nathan and me, confusion crossing her features as she took in the scene. "Ava, Nathan, what's going on here?" she asked, her voice uncertain. But there was something else. An intuition, maybe, that told her something was wrong. I could feel the blood drain from my face. Victoria's presence was like a bucket of cold water, and in that moment everything felt wrong. There was no way to explain this, no way to justify what had just happened between Nathan and me. My throat tightened as I struggled to find the words. I I stammered, unsure of what to say. Nathan, now sitting on the bed, looked just as lost. His hand rubbed the back of his neck, clearly embarrassed, unsure how to explain it. Victoria's gaze moved from him to me, and there was an unspoken understanding between us. It was as if, in that single moment, everything shifted. Victoria knew something had happened, something that shouldn't have, but her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of anger or disappointment, there was only a deep, unsettling sadness in her eyes. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. Her presence was commanding, and the room fell into an odd, tense silence, like the calm before a storm. "Ava, you need to understand something," Victoria said gently, her voice softer than I anticipated. "There's more to this than you realize, more than either of you understand." I looked at her, confusion flooding my mind. What did she mean? What more was there? The silence lingered even after Victoria left. Her words hung in the air, leaving a mark on both of us. Despite all the confusion, her calm understanding and offer of guidance gave me something unexpected. Hope. Victoria wasn't angry, she didn't cast us aside. Instead, she gave us a chance that felt fragile and uncertain but still there. I glanced at Nathan. His face was a mixture of guilt and confusion and something else I couldn't quite identify. He was avoiding my gaze, his hands nervously rubbing together. I knew he felt the weight of what had happened, the way our worlds had collided unexpectedly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that none of this was anyone's plan. Things had unfolded beyond our control. What I knew for sure was that we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. Victoria was right about that. The feelings and confusion, everything had to be addressed and faced head-on. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "What do we do now?" Nathan looked at me, his eyes full of a mix of emotions. "I don't know, Ava. I don't know what to feel, what to think. I don't know if I should be angry, ashamed, or if I'm even allowed to feel anything at all." His voice cracked, revealing the internal struggle in his words. He was torn between the deep connection we had shared and his loyalty to Victoria, his wife. This situation couldn't be solved in one conversation. It wasn't that simple. I took a deep breath and walked toward him, closing the distance between us. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him, but I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what was right anymore. "I don't think we'll figure everything out right now," I said softly. "But I think we need to talk, to be honest with each other. This is too complicated to ignore." Nathan nodded slowly, his expression serious but not angry. "Yeah, I know, I don't know where to start." I took his hand, the touch both comforting and charged with unspoken emotion. "We start by admitting what happened, what we felt, what we still feel, and then we figure out what comes next." He nodded again, his expression softening just a little. "It's not going to be easy, Ava, but I want to understand. I want to understand what's happening between us." I squeezed his hand, the contact both comforting and filled with unspoken emotions. "I don't have all the answers, Nathan. I don't know what happens next, but I'm not running from this, not anymore." We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thought, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. There was no clear way forward, no easy answers. The emotions, the confusion, it was all so overwhelming. But what Victoria had offered us was a lifeline, the space to face everything together, to confront the mess we had found ourselves in. I looked at Nathan again, and for the first time I felt that no matter what happened next, we would face it with honesty. There was no perfect solution, no simple way to fix things, but there was hope. Hope for understanding, for healing, and maybe even for something more. As I sat back, my thoughts racing with all the possibilities, I couldn't help but think of Victoria and what she had said. Her calmness and her offer of understanding had opened up a door I didn't even know existed. She hadn't rejected us, she hadn't condemned us. Instead, she had given us room to breathe, room to process what had happened. But what would happen next? How would things unfold if we admitted the depth of what we still felt? Could we move forward, or would the weight of it all be too much? But those were questions for another time. Right now, it was just Nathan and me, sitting together in the silence of our shared uncertainty. We both knew nothing would ever be the same again. The only thing we could do was take the next step, whatever that might be, and somehow together we would figure it out. My name is Logan, and I'm 19, just trying to figure life out. I live with my father Thomas, who's an architect. He's always busy with work, caught up in projects. I lost my mother when I was young, so for a long time, it was just me and my dad. That was until a few years ago when he remarried. Her name is Amelia, and she's nothing like the stepmom I imagined. She's young, smart, and she feels more like a friend than a mom. But lately, things have gotten complicated. Let me tell you about the day that changed everything. It all started like any other quiet afternoon. My dad was away for work, and Amelia was out running errands, leaving me at home by myself. I don't mind being alone, I'm used to it by now. I spent the afternoon in my room just lounging around and looking at my phone. The house was so peaceful with no noise at all. I had just gotten out of the shower, still damp, and was lying on my bed, absorbed in my phone. It was quiet. Too quiet. The house seemed still, almost unnervingly so. I shook off the feeling but couldn't ignore it. That's when I heard a soft knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart skipped a beat. My first instinct was to put my shirt on, but I hesitated. Who would be at the door? Before I could move, the door creaked open. It was Amelia standing there in the doorway. Her eyes were locked on mine in a way I hadn't seen before. She was casually dressed in a light sweater and jeans, her dark hair hanging loosely around her shoulders. She looked unsure, like she was waiting for something. I didn't know what to do. I was caught completely off guard. "Sorry," she said softly, her voice gentle but carrying a tension I hadn't noticed before. "I didn't mean to interrupt." I immediately jumped up, trying to grab my shirt and pull it over my head, but something in her expression made me stop. She wasn't angry or upset. She was just watching me. Her gaze lingered on me, and it felt like everything had changed in that moment. "Amelia," I stammered, my heart racing. I wasn't expecting anyone. She didn't say anything at first. She just stepped into the room slowly, like everything between us had shifted. She took another step toward me, and I froze. My pulse was pounding in my chest. I felt exposed, not just physically, but emotionally too. My mind raced. Should I apologize? Should I tell her to leave? But before I could do anything, she spoke again. "You should have locked the door," she said, her voice soft but with something more behind it. I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. There was something pulling us together that I didn't understand, making it hard to breathe. She was standing so close now that I could feel the warmth of her body. It was overwhelming. I wanted to speak but couldn't. Then, before I even realized it, my hand reached for hers, shaking slightly. She didn't pull away. Her gaze never left me, and it felt like she was giving me permission. It was like she was waiting for me to make the first move. I took a step closer, my body moving almost by itself. Her eyes were locked on mine as I reached up and touched her face, my fingers grazing her soft skin. The connection between us was undeniable. The tension between us was suffocating. Just as I leaned in, ready to kiss her, the sound of footsteps in the hall broke the moment. Amelia quickly stepped back, her face flushing. "We can't," she whispered. "This isn't right." I stood frozen, my heart pounding. She was right, and we both knew it. But I couldn't ignore how I felt. Something had changed between us, and I wasn't sure I could pretend like nothing had happened. Before I could say anything, she glanced toward the door and then turned back to me. "We'll talk later," she said quickly before turning and leaving the room, her footsteps fading down the hall. I stood there in shock, unable to fully process what had just happened. A part of me felt relieved, but another part of me wanted to follow her to figure out what it all meant. I sat back down on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. Nothing felt the same anymore. The next few days passed slowly, like I was stuck in some kind of fog. I couldn't stop thinking about Amelia. What had happened wasn't just a brief moment. It was something more. The way her eyes held mine, the way she seemed to breathe faster when we were close. It all felt too real to ignore. But the worst part was that I couldn't talk to anyone about it. My friends wouldn't understand, and my dad certainly wouldn't. Amelia was still my stepmom. We both knew it was wrong, but the tension between us was impossible to escape. I tried to distance myself, telling myself it was just a moment of weakness, something we would both move past. But every time I saw her, I couldn't ignore the way her gaze lingered just a second too long. It was like she was waiting for something, but I wasn't sure what. One evening after dinner, my dad was working late. I was sitting on the couch flipping through the channels when Amelia walked into the room. She was wearing a loose sweater and leggings, her hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She looked different, more distant but also somehow more attractive. "Hey," she said, sitting down beside me on the couch. "Mind if I join you?" My heart raced, but I tried to stay calm. "No, of course not," I replied, my voice giving away my nervousness. She sat close, her shoulder brushing mine. I could feel the warmth of her body, and I had to force myself not to think about that moment in my room. We sat in silence for a while, but the air between us was heavy, filled with unsaid things. I could feel her presence more than I could focus on the TV. Then she spoke softly, about the other day. I stiffened. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation. "Amelia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I don't know what happened. I don't know why we—" she interrupted, her hand brushing mine. The touch was electric, like a spark in the air. She didn't pull away. Her fingers gently traced the lines of my hand. "I know it's complicated," she whispered, barely audible. "But I can't stop thinking about it, about you, Logan." My heart was racing, my ears ringing. I had never heard her say anything like that before. It felt like time had stopped, leaving just the two of us. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw the vulnerability in her eyes. She was just as conflicted as I was, maybe more, but there was something else. A deep yearning, a desire that was impossible to ignore. "Amelia," I said, my voice shaky, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is, but I can't stop thinking about you either." She leaned in, her lips almost brushing my ear. "We can't keep pretending this isn't happening," she whispered. "Can we?" I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to pull away, to tell her it was wrong, but the truth was, I didn't want to. I didn't want to deny the way I felt. Before I could say anything, she closed the gap between us, kissing me gently at first. It was the softest, most tentative kiss I'd ever had. I froze, my entire body still. The world seemed to fade as I kissed her back. My hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, the tension between us crackling in the air. Her lips were warm and soft, and I felt something I couldn't name, a deep longing to be closer to her, to lose myself in the moment. But just as quickly she pulled back, her eyes wide with panic. "We can't do this, Logan," she whispered. "It's wrong." I didn't know what to say. A part of me knew she was right, but another part didn't care. All I knew was I couldn't stop wanting her. "Amelia," I said, my voice low, "I don't care. I just need you." She looked at me, her gaze softening, but then she looked away, regret written on her face. "I can't," she said, trembling. "I can't do this to your dad, to you." I understood, but it didn't make it any easier. I wanted her more than anything, but the consequences of crossing that line were too much to bear. She quickly stood up, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "We need to stop," she said firmly. "This can't happen again." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me in the quiet living room, my heart racing, my mind spinning from everything that had just happened. The silence felt suffocating. I sat there completely still, trying to process everything that had just happened. Part of me wanted to follow Amelia, to talk to her, but I knew it was a bad idea. I couldn't stop thinking about that kiss, the way she felt in my arms, the warmth of her body against mine. It was as if I was addicted to the feeling, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the guilt creeping in. I had always looked up to my dad, trusted him, and now here I was, about to betray him in the worst way possible. I tried to distract myself, but it was useless. Every time I saw Amelia, I felt that same pull, that same connection. It wasn't just physical, it felt deeper, like something I couldn't escape. It was as if every part of me was drawn to her, even though I knew it was wrong. A few days later, I found myself in the kitchen making breakfast. The house was quiet. The only sound was the sizzle of bacon cooking in the pan. I hadn't seen Amelia yet, but I knew she'd be up soon. My heart raced just thinking about her. I tried to push the thoughts out of my mind, but they wouldn't go away. The memory of our kiss, the way I felt when she was near, it was overwhelming. Just as I was finishing setting the plates on the table, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around to find Amelia standing in the doorway. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was dressed casually in a blouse and jeans. To me, though, she might as well have been wearing a dress made of fire. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but with an underlying tension in it that matched how I was feeling inside. "Good morning," I replied, trying to sound calm even though my heart was pounding in my chest. She stepped closer, her eyes briefly glancing at the food on the table before looking back at me. There was a moment of silence, a heavy pause in the air. Then she spoke again. "You've been avoiding me," she said, her tone barely a whisper. It wasn't a question, but more like an accusation. I froze. Had it been that obvious? Was I really avoiding her? "I'm not avoiding you," I stammered, but deep down I knew I was. It was hard to face her after everything that had happened, but the truth was, every part of me wanted to reach out to her, to feel that connection again. She took a step closer, and I could smell her perfume, a soft mix of jasmine. It made my head spin. "You know this isn't right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We can't keep doing this, Logan." I wanted to respond, to tell her that I couldn't stop how I felt, that I didn't want to fight it anymore. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, my heart torn between what was right and what I wanted more than anything. "I don't know how to stop," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Amelia's expression softened, but there was a sadness in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. She reached out, her hand brushing lightly against my arm. The touch sent a wave of emotion through me. "You have to stop, Logan," she said quietly, her eyes searching mine. "This isn't just about us. It's about your dad too. It's about everything we've built. Do you really want to destroy that?" Her words hit me hard, like a punch to the gut. For the first time, I realized what was at stake. My dad, the man who had always been there for me, who had worked so hard for us, how could I betray him like this? But even then, the pull I felt toward Amelia didn't fade. It was still there, urging me to give in. I could feel the battle rising inside me between my heart and my conscience. "I don't know if I can," I said, my voice bitter. "I don't know how to stop feeling this way about you." Amelia sighed deeply, her hand falling to her side. "You have to, for your sake, for mine, and for your dad." Her words were like a cold shower, waking me up to the reality of what I was doing. I couldn't keep chasing something that was never meant to be. I couldn't keep risking everything for a fleeting moment of passion. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I just don't know what to do anymore." "You don't have to do anything," Amelia replied softly. "Just let it go. We have to let it go." Her words cut through the tension that had been hanging in the air, and I finally understood. I was on the verge of making a decision that could tear everything apart. I couldn't do that. Not to my dad, not to her, and not to myself. With a heavy heart, I nodded. "Okay," I whispered. "We'll stop. We have to stop." But as I turned back to face her, the look in her eyes told me that we both knew this wasn't over. The feelings hadn't disappeared. The temptation would still be there, waiting for us to slip. But in that moment, I knew that if we didn't stop now, we would never be able to fix the mess we were about to create. And I wasn't ready to live with that kind of regret.